Good evening, StreamYard and YouTube fans. This is Philip Reynolds, and tonight I wanted to talk about something that I don't know if we always think about it or not, but it's something that is a very part of the game every time we play it, and that's the parameters of the game. Uh, and I always, when I think about this, Chris, you'll love this. You know what this is, Chris. I know you do. And this is a 3-track cribbage board. And Chris, just so you know, uh, I do want to play sometime. Uh, but this is a cribbage board, and I want to talk about cribbage a little bit because it deals with the subject I want to talk about, and that's the parameters. The first parameters that you think of, like in a card game, like cribbage, is how many players. See, with cribbage, you can play solo. Yes, you can. Even though these rules don't say it, you can. I know how to play solo. You can play 2 players. You can play 3 players, also known as cutthroat cribbage, because everybody is competing against each other. You can play 4-player cribbage. To play 4-player cribbage, uh, you know, without being teammated together, you need a 4-track cribbage board. Otherwise, you can use like your standard 3-track or 2-track cribbage board, and you're playing as teams where North and South are a team and East and West are a team. Also, when you think of parameters with regards to cribbage, when you deal your cards, of course, you shuffle them first. But when you deal cards in cribbage, what happens is, depending on the number of players, it affects the number of cards that are given to each player. If you're playing just, if like me and Chris were playing, I deal 6 cards. I deal 6 cards. Then if I won the crib, uh, he'd throw 2 cards into my hand, and I'd throw 2 cards into my hand, and then the gameplay for points proceeds. Then after that, um, the dealer winds up having, the opposing player counts his hand first, and then the dealer gets a second hand, which is known as a crib. It's basically a bonus hand, is what it is. Uh, but for parameters, your first big thing is how many players. Now, it doesn't matter if you're playing cribbage, doesn't matter if you're playing Monopoly or Risk or Clue or Wingspan or any of those war games that ID Jester and his crew. How many players affects, like how many pieces you get at the beginning, how many moves you get per turn, type thing, anything like that. Um, and when I was thinking of like sports, uh, here's a good example. We all think of baseball. We all know baseball. Mm. And you think about it and you say, well, what can you do to change the game of baseball? Well, one of the things I like to do, because I've seen it, there's a video on it, is I don't like the pitchers to bat. And by doing that, you get rid of the DH, and you don't have to worry about the DH for the National League or the American. Boom, parameter. You just changed the variables of the game. Here's another one. What if every time there was a home run, you got to subtract a point, a point from the score of your opponent. That means solo home run is now -1 to the opponent. Two people come in, -2. Grand slam, 4. And not only that, but then you get a baseball game that could have negative points. And yeah, that's that's totally changing the parameters of the game. I've done it with uh, my Dice United when I made a rule where if the team's up by 2 scores or more, then they have to put in their secondary goalie. The goalie. So if you have a 9 goalie and a 5 goalie, and your 9 starting, then your 5 has to start when you get up by 2. That's a parameter change. You know, and here's another one that comes to my mind that you may not have think of. And the thing is sometimes these changes that we make to the parameters of games um, are game changers. And the best example I've got of this is Rob when he made Pedal to the Metal. It was a game changer. It takes red, white, and blue racing and it makes it from here and it elevates the game uh, that much more. And to the point where if it's not if you're not using pedal to the metal, it's not really red, white, and blue racing. And I know that Rob never really intended it to be that way. I mean, he just intended it to be like an enhancement of, but that's what happened. It made uh, him creating pedal to the metal just changed the game. I mean, it just really elevated red, white, and blue racing, but it elevates the game to a whole nother level. Uh, Sometimes there's things that you do in the game that elevates the game. Classic example. Take I believe it's my PSN episode 111. It's where I play in History Maker Golf. It's part 2. 100, and I had like 4 players playing History Maker Golf. They're all 4 for the very first time. They're all created players that I created. There's myself, there's Rob, there's Papa Rob, there's Doc, and let's see, and my dad, Bubba. Uh, those were the 5 players, and everything was going, pretty much normal until you get to the 16th hole, and it's my turn, and it's the very first time I'm using a player created cards at all, and I roll the dice, you know, and here on that roll I got a 1, which was player controlled. So you read the charts, and the dice roll was 1 6 6 6. Well, you go down to the charts, and the very first question is it a direct green? And the answer is yes. Hole in one. I mean, you just took History Maker Golf and boom, you made it that much more exciting because if you look at my card and let me get it for you, and because I kept it. I kept it. It's one of my game, you know, pieces that you don't get rid of because it means a lot. Let me get it for a second for you. Unfortunately, right now I can't have it, but I'll have to show it. But just your basic card. It's nothing really special about the card. I mean, like I I think it said something for woods, something for irons, and that I was a prospect uh, golfer, which is like an up and coming guy, and that. But it's generic. I mean, there's not a lot of pluses and not a lot of no really negatives on the card like stone or anything like that. It's just a generic card. But when I rolled that dice and boom, I got that hole in one, it took an average card and made it that much more exciting in that. Uh, and the thing about that roll is I think that if I were to use like any of your all-time greatest players, the ones that just came out, the 75, the 75 all time, it they would have gotten a hole in one too, you know. But the thing that elevated elevated that made it a game changer is it was a player created card, a card that I created. Nothing really special about it. It's just I created it, and by that one roll, it took my card from here, and gave it that status. It just it happens. Um, and I don't know if you've all seen things like this in your games and that. I mean, Chris does it every time he does a tutorial. He takes a game and shows you how to play it, and every time he does that, he takes the game from here to there. And same with Rob when he gets his guys together and they start talking about sports and this, that, and the other thing in the draft, and they have Appa Brian in there. They're they're elevating the game in that, and that's what we as gamers, I mean, game people want to do. I mean, playing these games, it's the idea of teaching. It's the idea of, and it's not only the idea of learning the game, but it's looking at the game and making it, turning it sideways to elevate it to a step that nobody ever thought of before. Rob did it when he created Pedal to the Metal, and I don't really think he really realized that he did that. You know, sometimes it's the things that we do. You know, uh, sometimes it's the records we break, and a good example of that is Roger Maris. I mean, the record for home runs has been around since Ruth, and he was just one of several home run hitters, and he he that chase caused him to elevate his game and break the record. You know, um, and Chris does that when by when he plays when he plays games. I mean, when he plays against me, that causes me to elevate my game and to try to play better and try to beat him. You know, but when Chris and I did that strat, it just it yeah, it made strat more fun. I mean, it made it fun for me, but it just elevated the game uh, that much more for me. Uh, and yeah, I like History Maker baseball, and I've played uh, APA baseball and that. But for me, I really when I play Strat anymore, the only way you see me play it is with Chris. It just I get more enjoyment out of playing that game with someone like Chris. He's challenging, and it's not easy to beat him because he's good at playing games, and that's the other thing with Chris that elevates it more is he doesn't just play like inside pitch like RJL does. He'll play inside pitch. He'll try a wingspan. He'll try a Marvel Universe game type thing. He tries all sorts of games, and some of them he's average, and some of them he excels at. But he's always trying to learn something new. And that's what we as gamers strive to do: learn something new, teach something, show people a new way to play it. Um, say, hey, I've thought of this addition to like say chess, for instance. I don't know if most people know it, but there is a four-player version of chess. Where the board is it's a cross, and you have uh, pieces here and pieces here, and on each side. And the idea is not only are you playing against one other opponent now, you're playing three other players. So it just elevates chess that much more. And you thought the Star Trek version was the hardest. Nah, I mean that's it's makes it three dimensional and make causes you to think. But four-player chess even elevates that much further. But you know, the whole thing about games is we as gamers really want to be known as changers. And sometimes that's uh, inventing new uh, rules that the people of the game never really thought of. I talked about before what I do to change football. You know, and I've never really seen anybody institute my rules or anything like that, where instead of four downs, it's three downs. There's no kickoffs. You start at the 25, and the other thing is no field goals that were less than 40 yards. If it was under 40, you had to go for it on fourth down and stuff like that. I've not seen anybody try my rules for football, but I made them and they're there. And if anybody wants to try it, give it a shot and let me know how it turned out for you. But you know, really, it's uh, we all want to be remembered to have some sort of legacy. I mean, children is a good example. We want to instill our children to do better than we did, and that, and same goes with games. Yeah, we want to learn them, we want to teach them, but sometimes we want to elevate them and change them to something that people never thought about or expected before. We really as gamers, we just want to be known as game changers. That's what our really we want to be known as for our legacies. We want to be game changers. We want to make an impact on the games that we play. Not only make an impact on the games that we play, but in such a way that others take what we we've done, like Rob, pedal to the metal, and they use it when they play it. I mean, what greater legacy does he have than hey, wow, I created something for a game that I didn't know was going to be that great, or that it was just to enhance the game, but people love it, and really when you see red, white, and blue racing anymore, that's part of the game that people really like. Not only the crashes and wrecks that happen, but you know, like to see how many people can get in on that train and how many cars it can pass. Um, and But that's what I wanted to get on here today and talk about. I wanted to talk about parameters, and the idea of becoming a game changer. You know, and I know that all of us out there, that's what we want to do. We want to become a game changer, and the best way to do that is to learn the rules. I mean, probably not many people know how to play cribbage. This is one of those games, really, that I could sit this thing on the shelf for 20 years, and as much as I've played it, I could sit this on the shelf for 20 years, not play for 20 years. Chris called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to play some cribbage?" Say yes, and I'd play, and I know the game just like that from like day one. And I have to tell you, my dad taught me this game when I was 12 years old, and it took me about a month to 2 months to beat him. And yeah, one of my biggest or greatest accomplishments in this game is I actually not no I no Chris, I didn't get the 29 hand. Uh, I saw the odds in getting that, and they're astronomical, 200,000 to one. Yeah, to get the 29 hand. I haven't gotten that, but I will show you this, and you'll see right here it says 60. Now, a skunk is right there, and that's at 90. Uh, what's known as a double skunk, which is right there, yeah, that's 60. My opponent one time, and this is back in the Microsoft card gaming days. That's a long time ago. We're talking back in the 80s, guys. Yeah, 80s. I was playing in we were playing teams, and the parameters were that you had, you were playing partners, and one partner would play the first game, the other partner would play the second game, and then after that, you would decide who would play the third game. Well, uh, uh, my opponent played his game, and I played the second game, and I'm just playing, and the next thing I know, I'm getting these hands that are astronomical. I mean, the lowest hand I had in that game was a 12 hand, meaning you scored 12 points, and I was getting hands that were 20, 24, 20. I had a 20 hand, a 24 hand, and a 24 hand. You know, like boom, 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 boom. The game was over in literally 6 to 7 moves, 6 to 7 hands. Now, you'll notice that in order to win cribbage, it's 121 points. 6 hands means that you're averaging 20 points a hand. Yeah. And if you're the dealer, remember you get 2 hands. So you basically, you know, that means that four four times out of six you're probably gonna be having your 2 hands. So yeah, and it was just like I said, it was like boom, 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 gone, over. But that's one of the reasons why I like cribbage so much is that I've only had it done it once, but um, it I I kept somebody from getting over 60 points in the game, known as a double skunk, and that's just as to me that's just as hard to do as it is to get the 29 hand. Now, just so you know, 29 hand would be like this. This is in your hand, and this is the turn card. The turn card would be the five of spades, but you also have the five of jack in your hand. So that's 29. That's the highest hand you can get in cribbage. And yeah, um, but it's just something that I wanted to come on here. I was thinking about it. It just came in my head, thinking about the idea of parameters and stuff like that. And a lot of times, it's like I read the instruction, the manual that came for the uh, um Central City League Season 2, and it has uh, locker room, a locker room check thing in there. And now that's what I do when I play not only uh, Stone Cold Hockey, but also Dice United 2. I use those locker room checks before the game, during the game to start the second half for soccer, and during in between periods in Stone Cold Hockey, and that, and it's to change things in the game, change some of the parameters, and can a team overcome the fact that a keeper is, his keeper rating instead of say going up goes down a grade, and you have like a 9 keeper, and that would mean he's an 8. Does that affect the game in the second period or the third? You know, it can. And I have noticed that like this season, I've my next game I think is game 7, basically the start of week 4, and I have noticed that I've had 2 goalies that have had 5 saves so far this season in one game. 5 saves in one game. The odd thing, the really coinky dink thing about it, is guess what, guys? The teams that they were on lost that game. Yeah. One of them was Madison, and one of them wasn't Madison. But both teams lost that particular game where the goalie scored 5 saves. That's something to think about. Well, you all take care. Have a good night. Just something I wanted to come on and talk about for a bit. Any thoughts or comments, please post them. And Chris, anytime, I'm up for it. And and he did get me to sign up to something that's called Board Game Arena and that. So we might get on there and play some cribbage or try Wingspan sometime. I did notice that Wingspan was one of the games on there. Um, but what there was one other thing I was thinking about before I left, and it is oh, Yeah, w- one of the things I I love cribbage, but I do not like playing it online for the simple fact that when you play a game of game of cribbage against a computer generated opponent, it's always playing to win. Now, if you played cribbage and you've played it in leagues and stuff like that, like I have, you'll notice one thing real quick. Cribbage is not always played to win. Sometimes what'll happen, there's a version called Crazy Eights, where anytime you cut the deck, and that's your peg card, basically, is what they call that. Uh, if it's an eight, what happens is instead of winning, now you're playing to lose. Two hands go by, and it comes, you've been playing to lose for two hands. You get another eight, now you're playing to win. There's also a version of cribbage where uh, we'll say this is my hand, and now I throw from my crib. Well, I could throw the jack and five. I could throw two fives in my crib. Um, but if these were your six cards, you know, those were your six card. I mean, if three, four, five, yeah, if those are your six cards, you're probably going to throw, you know, but what I'm saying is basically what happens is you get to select two cards for your cribs. If you throw two fives in, now you get to decide. It's called wish cribbage. Now you get to call two cards for your crib. And if I say four and six, my opponent, if he has a four or a six, has to put it in his crib. It has to put it into my cribbage, into my crib for that round. Uh, Now, if he had more than one, he gets to decide which ones, but if he has to throw at least a 4 or a 6. If he doesn't have a 4 or a 6, then he can throw whatever, but if he has a 4 or a 6, he has to throw it. It's called wish cribbage, where the person who has the crib gets to select what they want in their cribbage. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I really don't like playing on game sites or against computer opponents and stuff like that, because the there's very few computer generated cribbage games that can play at my my level of knowledge of cribbage. In order for me to play that, I'd have to be in a tournament. That's something I've never done, but that's close to what I'd have to have as a tournament to be on a level of competitive level. Something I haven't done. I'd love to do, but it's just something I haven't done. And I'm sorry, but no computer version of cribbage that I've seen comes really really close. Um, but that's just some of the things I wanted to talk about. Parameters being a game changer in that, and you know, sometimes it's just the fact of trying to teach and get on here and create videos and stuff so that other people's learn something. Um, you all have a good night. This episode's a wrap. I hope all your rolls go your way. And until next time, keep winning, guys.